analyze it. So I told them, well, give me a couple pieces of the object. It broke into several pieces on removal, and I said I'll analyze it with the instruments I have access to at my work. I worked at a place called YTC America at the time. They had a lot of analytical equipment, including an electron microscope and Raman spectrometers and infrared spectrometers and just about every piece of analytical equipment you could name. And so I analyzed the object there and basically found out that it was a sophisticated nanotechnological device and probably came from off-planet. The metal was meteoric iron, like I found before with some of the previous objects, and it was giving off a magnetic field. It was transmitting radio signals before removal, and contained carbon nanotubes, surprisingly enough. We've proved that with both scanning electron microscopy and Raman spectroscopy. That's one of the ways you characterize carbon nanotubes, with laser-based Raman spectroscopy. And I think that it's been pretty much a smoking gun, is the fact that these are sophisticated nanotechnological devices that probably came from off-planet. And I think all we need now is to do more research to convince the mainstream scientific community that that our conclusions are accurate. They're pretty hard to convince, so it might take maybe 100 of these objects to be analyzed. But after that, I think it'll be a body of evidence that's impossible to deny.
Well, how did you now? Did you meet Daryl Sims or not? You were on the page 15.
I met him fairly recently.
Oh,
about
okay.
3 years about 3 years ago. I've met him at conferences, and he came out to California a couple of years ago, and Alice Levy and I met with him, and he seems like a good guy and knows a lot about the subject, and he's a great investigator. He came up with the knowledge that there's UV fluorescent dyes left behind on the body after an abduction. I discovered that independently, but evidently he was the first one to uncover that. That's one of the best pieces of physical evidence that one has been abducted. The dyes stay on the body for up to a month after an abduction, and they don't wash off. And there's several colors. There's yellow, green, orange, and bright blue, and they show up best under shortwave UV light. And there's some kind of marker dyes, I think, and the yellow-green is on their skin because we've seen four-fingered handprints and finger marks in it before. In the Watcher series that I was on, Rick Shaw paid for some research where we went down to SEAL Labs and took a fleck of paint from my wall from my old house in Fillmore that had a four-fingered handprint on it, right next to my bed, and I took that section of the wall out. We took a fleck of paint off the four-fingered handprint and put it under the electron microscope and did EDX elemental analysis on it, and found out that there was no chlorine in that fleck of paint. So human sweat has sodium chloride in it. So whatever touched that wall was not human. That pretty much shows that. That yellow-green fluorescent material that was on the wall was not derived from human. That was a very interesting finding.
Did they? Did spectral analysis? What type of analysis was done?
We took a fleck of paint from a section of wall that had a four-fingered handprint on it, and put it under an electron microscope and did EDX elemental analysis, which you can do under the SEM, and found that there was no chlorine in that fleck of paint. And human sweat has sodium chloride in it and contains chlorine. So whatever touched that wall was not human.
Well, did they suspect, now this was in your home, personal home, right?
Yeah, it was right next to my bed. Yeah, I've got pictures of the handprint.
Did they ask for any data or anything that you may have consciously or subconsciously or did you have any memories, or was that called an abduction, or how do you explain that?
Well, I'd had many abductions at that time. They were coming frequently. I'm not sure exactly when that handprint was left, but it just showed that something, about the size of a child with 4 fingers had touched that wall, and that it wasn't, whatever it wasn't human.
Janet, do you have any questions thus far?
I was on mute. Yeah, that's fascinating. So you've been able to document that they're touching people. I think we met at one point, and you have a little machine that you take to conferences.
Yeah, I think you expressed interest at one time in getting a scan. One of the things I do is I scan people for evidence of the presence of alien implants and and evidence of recent abduction. I go over them with the UV light, and I try to find out if there's any of these dyes. Sometimes you find weird alien symbols and finger marks or all kinds of things. It's rare that somebody's abducted and none of these dyes show up. And I go over the person with a stud finder, concentrating on the areas of concern, and see if the stud finder goes off. It's a little metal detector that usually detects nails and walls.
Mm-hmm.
And I also go over them with a Gauss meter. It detects weak magnetic fields. If you find a spot that sets off a stud finder and also has a magnetic field, that's almost certainly an implant, because most of these implants give off a magnetic field. Most of these implants have a metallic core and are stationary. There's also ones that move into the skin. We've never been able to remove those, but just thought I'd mention it. And there's also biological ones that Dr. Leir has seen rarely. I personally have never seen one, but he found one under the skin of the arm of a flight attendant once that was about the size of a small pea, and he said it would follow your finger within a prescribed area. And to get it out, he had to clamp off the area and to keep it from running away from him.
That's funny.
When Willie Strieber was going to have an operation to remove his from his ear, they didn't do that, and it got away from the surgeon, a Dr. Lerma, and he said he got a piece of it. I'd love to see his data on that, but he said it had cilia on it that allow it to move into the skin.
Yeah, I got one when I remember getting mine. I was about 4 or 5 years old, about 4, I'd say, and I was out in the yard. Back in the 50s, you could go out in the yard, and my mother was inside working in the kitchen. She'd just keep an eye on me, so I was out playing in the yard, and I came running in the door, and I said, Mommy, a bee stung me, and it was behind my ear. It swelled up, and I still have it. It's got 2 pieces. I had a psychic one day, did a reading on me. She goes, "Oh, you have an alien implant in 2 pieces," and I never told anybody that. And then my mother took me to the doctor, and they said, the doctor was just baffled. He said, "I don't know what it is. Maybe it's a cyst or something." I wouldn't worry about it, so I spent my life going, do I have cancer? But no, I didn't have cancer.
Where on your body was it again?
But it's behind the right ear. And I was reading later from Bud Hopkins, one of his books, and he said, this girl, he described how she thought it was a bee, but it was actually like a little probe. And
that's a fairly common spot.
Yeah. So anyway, I've had that all my life, and the lady who did a reading, actually TJ was there. This is how we met each other. Remember that, TJ? This lady was on top of. You drove us there, but it was up on top of a mountain, and I sat down in the room, and she identified all these different implants in me, and I we had no way of proving it. And this is back in the early 90s, right?
Was this 93 or 4? 94?
93.
It was 93.
The time you drove.
Okay.
Yeah, the time you drove me, and I was sitting behind you in the Cadillac.
The little shy girl from. Yeah, you were your spiritual center. Yeah, the little shy girl. So I keep forgetting that. I always say May 2017, but I guess I do have to count that, even though I was presidency of a corporation, plus I was working for the government, and then I was running Psychic Network at the time, Steve, and I was coordinating a lot of psychic fairs at the Hilton Hawaiian Village, but she was going to Spiritual World Network there, and we were coordinating because the man that was running it was leaving for the mainland. So I was staying, and I was taking over all that group and incorporating into my association, Psychic Network. So Janet was just being briefed on Project Stargate, which we had people doing table tapping, sensory, sparking them. We called it Psychic Awakening classes. But, yeah, she was just going to get started and was working with the local. She was the local Hallie, right, Janet?
Yeah, just about all experiencers are psychic, so that's one of the things we're looking for. Oh, yeah.
Really?
That's one of the things the aliens are looking for. And one thing I've noticed is that a contact with these creatures seems to rev up whatever psychic abilities you have, too.
Very interesting.
That
quite interesting that
experiences.
What?
Yes. Near-death experiencers.
When you have contact with the ETs and the near-death experiences, that tends to psych up your psychic abilities.
Oh, yeah. The near-death experiences do, too, I hear. I don't want to find out, but, I've heard that. And
well, tell us how you found out about the psychic. Why would, aliens, because I've worked with them, but they're benevolent, extraterrestrials, and I'm not accustomed to working with abductees. Janet is. Tommy is, Bud Hopkins, but most of the people in my association are contactees or experiencers from a benevolent source. But now I heard Travis Walker in the beginning said it was alien abduction, and he's gradually Travis Walton. But at the same time, I heard later on that he felt like at some point he had the story. I heard this from various people that know him, but I haven't vetted him personally, but I heard that he had decided that a lot of it was he did participate. But, folks, you can track Travis Walton yourself, so please do look that up. But we do separate contactees from abductees, meaning one is with permission and one is not, apparently, or with your focus being what we call consciously aware. So how do you deal with that, Steve? So maybe we should let you speak on that for a moment.
Well, I think that a lot of people start out where it's against their will, and then they evolve to say, well, if I'm going to be doing this anyway, I might as well just participate, and then it evolves into active participation. Some people argue that we gave permission in a former life or before we came to this world or something, but that's debatable. But definitely, from what I've heard talking to people, is that it evolves from you're terrified and you're not participating and you hate these things and want them to go away to kind of almost loving them and wanting to participate in their agenda. And I think it's a combination of like Stockholm syndrome and mind control. They use powerful mind control on people. And I'm not one of these people that thinks they're scum-sucking evil or anything like that, though. I think that their agenda is probably, at least in part, for the common good of humanity. But it's kind of like how we tag animals.
I think they're like the vet, right? The vet wants to get us better,
right.
But then sometimes the vet puts us to sleep. So,
we have our perceptions. I really don't think they're totally evil or anything, but they do lack compassion. They're pure intellect. I heard that they got rid of emotions in their species long ago to maximize their intellect, and now realize that was a mistake. And I think that's part of the reason they're hybridizing people into their species to get some people in their species that have emotion again to get that unique viewpoint.
Yes, now I have similar to that. Mm-hmm.
Let me just add something.
Sure.
I'll pass it to you before I forget. We do hypnotherapy with the people, my husband and I, and most times they realize that there was some kind of agreement that to participate in. And I liked your analogy. What was it? Part Stockholm syndrome and mind control. We
Stockholm.
don't know. We don't know. But I years ago, I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this. It's kind of like a joke. I used to borrow my brother's science fiction books, and I read one book, and there was this elaborate thing where this girl ended up getting captured, and her boyfriend went through hell to rescue her, and he comes